Welcome to episode 6 of Fourth and Inches. I'm Nate Smith alongside Jordan D'Souza and Christian Agarbidi. Another great week of NFL football. Starting to get a picture of who's for real, who's fake, and what teams are stuck in the case of mediocrity. But first, as always, how was your weekend, boys?
All right, just like one question, just like a little disclaimer. I just need to ask this now. Christian, how do you pronounce your last name?
It's Agarbide, Jordan.
Okay, it's Agarbide. And Nate, how did you say it?
I believe I said it, Agarbide.
I think you said Agarbide. Did you hear Agarbide?
I didn't even hear him say it, but in any event, it's quite usual for people to call me Cree or Cray as a nickname in regards to my initials, so no biggie on the last name.
Okay, my thing is just like you said it differently than I've been saying it, and I don't want to like have called you by the last name for like or the wrong last name for like 2 months. But anyway, side note, we'll just forget about that. Other than that, my weekend was fine. I was a little under the weather, so I binge watched The Office a lot. So Office, football, ate some good food. Had Chick-fil-A once. That was one time too many. Just got a big sandwich and some fries. Other than that, it was just a normal run-of-the-mill weekend. How about you?
Yeah, I mean, I really enjoyed my weekend. Most of it was spent in tense anticipation for Westworld on Sunday night. New show that me and Jordan are into on HBO. Comes out every Sunday. I'd highly encourage you to start watching it. But yeah, just another weekend of football. Ordered some pizza on Saturday that I devoured. And yeah, Sunday, just a whole day of football. No complaints at all.
Now, you really didn't get much sleep this weekend, did you?
I probably slept maybe 4 hours on the whole 3-day weekend. So yeah, no, not much sleep at all.
Can you explain to everyone what you were doing in those times that you were not sleeping?
Well, here at the Nate Smith and Jordan D'Souza Palace, I just downloaded Madden 17 onto their Xbox. So I've kind of just been like a third tenant here who's been sleeping on the couch, playing Madden, just copious amounts, hours on end. And just finished my first season, 2016 Patriots, went 15-1, won the Super Bowl. So you know what it is. That's why no sleep was gotten.
Nate, how about yourself?
Yes, I'd have to reiterate, I also had a good weekend. Started off Friday night with a little 6-month anniversary dinner with the old lady. Shout out Emily for. Proceeded to have a little 5-hour shift on Saturday at the old Chick-fil-A. Come in and get a chicken sandwich today. And then on Sunday, watched my Cowboys play a great game against the Packers. Solid victory. So overall, I'd say it was a fantastic weekend, and I think we're ready to talk about what happened this past Sunday. And without further ado, we'll get right into this week's rapid recap for Week 6. Thursday Night Football kicked it off with Broncos at Chargers. Chargers win a weird game, 21-13. Denver drops their second in a row. San Diego tight end Hunter Henry shines again, 83 yards and 1 touchdown. Looks like he's going to be replacing Antonio Gates. Melvin Gordon carried the ball 27 times, gained 94 yards on the ground. 49ers at Bills. Kaepernick's first start did not go well. Bills Mafia takes this one 45-16. LaShawn McCoy, 140 yards on the ground, 3 touchdowns. What a start for him. Eagles at Redskins. Skins win in an ugly ball game, 27-20. Kirk Cousins, 263 yards and 2 touchdowns. Matt Jones had quite the day on the ground, 135 yards and a score. Browns at Titans. Titans win this one 28-26. Even though the Browns lost, Kessler looked good. 336 yards, 2 TDs. Maybe they can finally stop adding to the Browns quarterback jersey. Kessler looks pretty good. Mariota, 284 yards, 3 TDs, 1 pick. Continues his impressive streak. Ravens at Giants. Giants win the close one, 27-23. Manning had a great day, 403 yards, 3 touchdowns. Odell Beckham, 8 receptions, 222 yards, 2 touchdowns, and a whole lot of antics. Jaguars at Bears. Ugliest game on Sunday by far, but the Jags win this one by a score of 17-16. Hoyer continues his impressive performance, 4th straight game with over 300 yards. Trouble in Jacksonville. Bortles and the Jacksonville offense do not look good. They look to get on track next week. Rams at Lions. Lions win this one 31-28. Case Keenum had a great day, 321 yards and 3 touchdowns through the air. Golden Tate had 165 yards and 1 touchdown for the Lions. Chiefs at Raiders. Chiefs with the blowout win, 26-10. Andy Reid does not lose after a bye week. Spencer Ware had 131 yards and 1 touchdown. Chiefs D holds strong, limiting the Raiders to 10 points. Colts at Texans in an overtime thriller. The Texans win this one 26-23 in comeback fashion. Brock Osweiler had 269 yards and 2 scores. Lamar Miller finally had his breakout game, 149 yards on the ground and 1 score. Jets at the Cardinals on Monday night to wrap things up. The Cardinals win this one in a blowout fashion, 28-3. David Johnson, one of the best young and best overall running backs in the game, had 111 yards on the ground and 3 touchdowns. Another awful game for Ryan Fitzpatrick, posted a 55 QBR and threw another interception. Might be a change coming soon at quarterback in New York. And that's the Week 6 Rapid Recap. Here we go, getting to Game 1 in our in-depth analysis. The first game we'll discuss in-depth today will be the Carolina Panthers at the New Orleans Saints this past Sunday. Very close game, pretty entertaining throughout, very high scoring. The Saints won this one by a score of 41-38. Quick stat line, Drew Brees had a great day. He was on fire. 34-49, 465 yards, 4 touchdowns, only 1 interception. Quite impressive QBR of 118.2. Cam Newton also had a pretty good day. He had 322 yards, 2 touchdowns, and 1 pick. Guys, Carolina falls to 1-5. They are 0-3 on the road. Is it officially time to hit the panic button in Carolina?
I mean, yes and no. I think that the Panthers' chances of making the playoffs are very slim at this point, but I still think they have a very talented roster. I think they're missing Josh Norman a lot more than they thought they would this year. I mean, in no situation should you score 38 points in an NFL game and still lose. I think that the offense has been pretty good as of late, and that the defense really has been the weak spot. And then the loss of Josh Norman has really affected their secondary. I mean, you just look at the numbers. Brees throws for 465 yards and 4 touchdowns. I mean, he's a great quarterback, but come on, that's just way too much. And I just really think that the Panthers this year are going to have trouble making the playoffs. But in the future, if they can draft or sign another good cornerback, then things should be looking up for them.
Yeah, I mean, to answer the question in regards for this year, it most definitely is time to hit the panic button. You're 1-5. The Atlanta Falcons are off to a great start. Even the Saints are playing better than you at the moment. And then the Bucs are right around there with you. So you're kind of at the bottom of the division right now. Things are not looking good for making the playoffs. So panic if you're the Panthers. Their defense looked horrible in this game, giving up 41 points to the Saints. Brandon Cooks was running all over them. Drew Brees flinging the ball all around the field. But one thing that I thought was interesting was, did you guys check out Cam's post-game interview? It was very, very similar to the one he gave after the Super Bowl loss. He stood up there for 90 seconds, I think was the time that he was up there on the podium, answered 4 or 5 questions, but his answers were along the lines of next question or a very short, concise answer, and then he walked out after 90 seconds on the podium. So what are your guys' takeaway kind of from Cam's behavior after?
I mean, I think this year he's definitely frustrated. I mean, he kind of has a right to be frustrated. The first few games, he's just getting smacked around. I mean, there were a lot of no calls in that first game, and then he had the concussion to deal with. And I mean, he hasn't been MVP Cam Newton, which we expected. He's been good, not great. He's been turning the ball over a little much. But I definitely think that he's put his team in a position to win, and then it just really all comes down to the defense giving up 41 points. So I think he has a right to be frustrated, but as the quarterback, as the reigning MVP, as the leader of that team, you need to handle the situation in a much better fashion.
Yeah, I mean, you guys covered it for the most part. Carolina, they scored 38 points, shouldn't be losing this game. As far as Cam Newton goes, I've never really thought of him too much as a leader. I just think he's obviously a great player that just happens to play quarterback. but I don't really know if he was ever cut out to like actually lead a team. He's just a very emotional guy, always up and down, pretty arrogant player that I know a lot of opposing defenses like want to take as many shots at him as they can, whether that's legally or helmet to helmet. We never know. They'll take whatever they can get. But yeah, I understand his level of frustration, but at the same time, I think a lot of the blame falls on him. This game he was fine. He passed for over 200 yards, but in their first 4 to 5 games, he was not very good. He had multiple games where he threw an interception. He hasn't been the same player that he was last year, and I don't know if that has to do with losing Josh Norman on the defensive side. Maybe he's not as confident in his offense, but getting Kelvin Benjamin back, that was supposed to help, but he hasn't been himself this year. He hasn't had those MVP numbers that we're used to seeing from last year. So I think he has been an issue in the first few games, and then obviously the defense isn't helping. Moving right along, the second game we will cover in depth be the Pittsburgh Steelers at the Miami Dolphins. Miami Dolphins win this one shockingly, 30-15, double up the Steelers. Really weird game. Jay Ajayi absolutely went off. 25 carries, 204 yards, 2 touchdowns. Tannehill was okay. He had 252 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. Roethlisberger actually exited this game with an injury. It is reported that it is a meniscus, and I've heard conflicting reports, but I think it's partially torn. So he will be out for at least 4 weeks minimum. We'll see how fast he can recover. But even before he got hurt, he was not having a good day. He finished with 189 yards, 1 touchdown, and 2 picks. Guys, the Steelers are another interesting team. They're 4-2, so I would not say that they're in the same position as the Panthers. 1-5 is much more desperate. But the Steelers are an interesting team because I feel like they lose games that they're not supposed to lose. They seem to be very inconsistent. They got blown out by Philly a couple weeks back and now blown out by Miami. Are the Steelers really that good, or do they just have a really good offense?
I think the Steelers are a team that's good enough to make the playoffs, but in terms of contending to be in the Super Bowl, I don't think that they're at that point yet. Honestly, any other team besides the Patriots, I don't think anyone can really contend with the Patriots at this point. But in terms of the Ben Roethlisberger injury, I heard reports that were saying it's going to only be a minor thing, but even that, a meniscus, that just sounds bad. So even if he is out 5 to 6 weeks, they are 4-2, and then I'm pretty sure they are in first in their division. So even with the injury, I still think that they'll be able to either be in first or second in their division by the time Ben comes back. So making the playoffs won't be the problem for them, but I just think overall they're not really in a position where they can contend to make the Super Bowl or go deep in the playoffs. They do have some great offensive playmakers. I think they have one of the best quarterback, running back, receiver combos really in the NFL. But in terms of the defense hasn't really shown me that they could piece together big games after big games and just stay consistent.
Yeah, my biggest problem with the Steelers is their defense. I don't think anyone's ever really trusted their secondary. It's kind of been pretty poor for a while now, but their run defense was always pretty solid. And then in this game, they just got ran all over by Jay Ajayi. Is that how you say it?
Pretty sure it is Ajayi.
Yeah, this unknown. He's a rookie, right?
No, he actually played last year.
So this unknown second-year guy just goes for 200 plus on him, just runs all over them. The Pittsburgh Steelers defense, against a potent offense, I can understand maybe, giving up some points, but this is the Miami Dolphins hanging 30 on you. And then, the offense couldn't even produce, anything more than 15 points. So, Ben, having him out is hugely going to impact them. If he's out for 5-6 weeks, I think they can maybe pull off 2-3 in that span, maybe even 1-4, and that would obviously be detrimental to their hopes, depending on how the Ravens play and how other teams in their division play. So, right now the Steelers are really up in the air for me. I definitely think even if they make the playoffs, they're not going to be able to contend with a New England, especially seeing that the Patriots will probably have home field advantage. Playing in Foxborough is never easy. So, the Steelers to me are just kind of in limbo right now. They're a good team. They're probably a playoff team, but, if you don't do anything in the playoffs, that's just kind of like a participation award. So,
yeah, I think the Steelers with Big Ben, obviously a quality team, probably top 8 team in the NFL, definitely a playoff team. Without him, I honestly think they might miss out on the playoffs, depending on how long he is, in fact, out. I mean, that remains to be seen. But even if he is there, like we said, the defense is a big issue. I mean, if you give up 474 total yards to the Miami Dolphins, you got some problems. I mean, that's a bottom 10 offense in the league. I just blows my mind how a defense can give up that many yards to the Miami Dolphins. But I digress. The AFC North is actually stronger than you would think. Yes, the Bengals are sitting at 2-4, but they have played a tough schedule. They've played the Cowboys and the Patriots so far. I think it'll get easier for them, and they seem to be finding a bit of a rhythm, even though they did get smacked by the Patriots. So I could see the Bengals ripping off a few wins in a row. The Ravens are always in contention. John Harbaugh's a great coach. They're sitting at 3-3, so they're a game back. I definitely see the Steelers losing their next few. I mean, not having your quarterback is a big deal, especially when it's someone elite like Big Ben. So, honestly, if he's out for longer than a month or two, I'm not sure the Steelers make the playoffs because they don't have a dominant defense to hang their hat on. I think people can key in on Le'Veon Bell with Big Ben not there to support the passing attack. So, I don't know. Steeler Nation might be in a little bit of trouble. We'll have to wait and see these next coming weeks. Move to game number 3 on our slate. We had the Bengals at the Patriots in Tom Brady's long-awaited return to Foxborough. Oh, how the New England fans missed him. The Patriots, man, they look very good. The AFC we were just talking about was pretty weak this year. They beat up on the Bengals by a score of 35-17. Tom Brady, impressive stat line per usual. 376 yards through the air, 3 touchdowns, no picks, a 140 QBR. It's just sickening. Andy Dalton, not terrible, 254 yards, 1 touchdown, no picks. Neither team really established a ground game in this one. Blunt rushed for about 50 yards, Gio Bernard for 49. Guys, we know the Patriots are really good. They probably end up being the 1 seed. Is there anyone that can challenge them in the AFC, or do they pretty much have a pretty easy route to the Super Bowl?
I think saying that they have an easy route to the Super Bowl is the understatement of the year. I mean, there's legit no one good in the AFC. I mean, there's teams that are going to finish 10-6, 11-5, but they're really just not that good. There's no team other than the Patriots that I can confidently say will be able to make a deep run into the playoffs that I just know is going to be a Super Bowl contender at this point. Even the Broncos from last year, yeah, their defense is great, but it hasn't really looked good the past couple of weeks. And I don't know how far a Trevor Siemian-led Broncos will be able to last in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, I definitely think that Broncos D has gotten worse. Not much worse, but it has gotten worse from last year. I mean, they did lose Danny Trevathan and a few other Malik Jackson, a few other parts of that front 7. So I do think they're not quite as dominant as they were last year. So my answer to the question is no. I don't think the Patriots are going to have any resistance towards the Super Bowl. When you think about them getting the 1 seed, having to play a divisional game at home against someone along the lines of Chiefs or Texans or one of these wild card teams, and then being at home for the AFC Championship again, I see no one beating them in Foxborough in that game. But just this game specifically, I just got to say it out loud how much I absolutely loved Gronk nearing the end of this game, getting in the face of Vontaze Burfict and the rest of the dirty Bengals squad and telling them off because of the illegal hit on Martellus Bennett. And I don't know if you guys saw the replay, but I mean, to me, that just looked absolutely malicious. There's nothing I can say to try to defend Vontaze Burfict. The ball was already going towards Amendola across the middle of the field. Martellus was in the flat, being guarded by one guy, and Vontaze just kind of launches himself into the back of Martellus's knees. I mean, that could be a career-ending injury, by all likelihood. So Gronk sees that. he catches a ball across the middle and starts getting into the face of the Bengals guys. To me, it just really showed that Gronk kind of has Martellus' back, which is really cool because, I mean, this is Martellus' first year on the Patriots. It's not like, he's been with those guys for very long, but already Gronk is kind of saying, yo, like, you can't be going low on my boys, trying to hit them, cheap hits like that. I'm going to have something to say about it. So I really like seeing Gronk step up for his man, even with the penalty. I don't mind it because I didn't really think there was anything to penalize him for. So I liked seeing that for the Pats. And, yeah, to me, they just seem like the most complete team in the AFC and the most consistent because, they don't drop games they're not supposed to. They always seem to come out and play their game. So, yeah, to answer your question, I really don't see much resistance for the Pats.
Yeah, I would have to agree with you guys. I mean, even the Broncos over the past couple weeks, they've dropped 2 in a row. They just lost to the Chargers. I mean, that's not a good sign for the AFC. That was widely considered, the second best team in the AFC. And so with them struggling, with the Steelers also struggling now that Big Ben is out, it's crazy. It's kind of like the Eastern Conference of basketball a few years ago. Like in 2010, Miami Heat just walked into the NBA Finals. It's kind of like this. Barring serious injury to a key star player or just a huge tornado, hurricane hits New England and everyone dies.
Knock on wood.
Knock on wood, of course. Knock on wood. I definitely see the Pats. Yeah, I don't see anyone stopping them from going to the Super Bowl. Maybe some weird fluke performance in the playoffs. Someone gets hurt during a game, or Broncos or Steelers just decide to play the best game of their lives. But just looking at the competition, I just don't think it's there. Belichick and Brady could be going for another ring this year, and that's a scary thought because they've dominated the NFL for more than 10 years, and just the fact that they're still this good, Brady being 39 is just crazy. As a Pats fan, I'm sure Pats fans have really got to enjoy this because, realistically, Brady probably has 2 to 3 good years left. So for him to continue to be playing at a high level like this is quite impressive. Yeah, so, to answer the question, I don't really see anyone stopping New England. You'll probably see them again in the Super Bowl. Chugging right along, we have the Battle of the Birds. Atlanta Falcons, who have been red hot, up against the Seattle Seahawks in front of the 12s in Seattle. This game had a lot of hype. Seattle actually came in as a 6-point favorite, surprisingly. I thought that was really generous. Seattle ended up winning this one 26-24. Despite the Legion of Boom, Matt Ryan still balled out. 335 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 pick. Continues his very, very impressive start to the year. Wilson, another mediocre day. 270 yards, no touchdowns, no picks. He's been pretty bad this year, honestly. Christine Michael, one bright spot for the Seattle offense. Had 64 yards rushing, but scored twice. Other side of the ball, the rushing attack was absolutely stuffed for the Falcons. They couldn't get anything going. Leading rusher was Freeman with 40 yards. Julio Jones did what Julio does. 139 yards through the air, 1 touchdown. So, guys, both of these teams, we're just talking about the NFC is pretty loaded this year. The top 10 teams could all do something in the playoffs. But these two teams, if the season ended today, they'd both make the playoffs. Yes, the Falcons lost, but out of these two teams, who do you think is the better overall team?
I'm going to have to just go with the Seahawks on this one. I've never really been convinced of the Atlanta Falcons being good. I think for the first 6 weeks of the season, pretty much every season, they always get off to hot starts. And losing a game like this is kind of showing. I guess it's safe to say they're in mid-season form, losing a game that they probably should have won. So they're definitely right on track to finish with a nice little 6-10 record, but that's still to be seen. But I just think the Seahawks overall are a better team. I think Russell Wilson just kind of needs some time to just kind of heat up. End of the season, he always ends up being pretty hot headed into the playoffs. Defense, Seattle still has one of the better defenses in the league, especially their secondary. I think their secondary can pretty much shut down any team's wide receivers. So once that pass rush starts getting there, then that's when their defense really becomes dangerous. I think the only problem with the Seahawks right now is just finding offensive consistency with their wide receivers. I mean, you look here, Jimmy Graham had 6 receptions for 89 yards. That's good to see for him coming off the injury, but I think that they're going to need some more production from Jermaine Kearse and Doug Baldwin, and even Tyler Lockett. Those are their top receivers right there, and they haven't been getting much production out of them as of late, but I'm definitely going to take the Seahawks over the Falcons in this one.
Yeah, I agree. I think just between these two teams, the Seahawks are definitely the more complete team. Like you said, the Falcons kind of go on and off with producing good wins and then kind of just having throwaway games. So, yeah, definitely take the Seahawks in this one. That defense is still for real, even though they've kind of not been getting as much attention as they were kind of in their Legion of Boom days. They still are just as dominant as any defense in the league. They can shut anyone down. So very good to see the Seahawks get a win. I still think they're going to be a threat to go deep into the playoffs, possibly to the Super Bowl. I think they can hang with the Vikings and teams of that sort. So this was definitely an interesting game. Late in the game, Richard Sherman maybe getting away with a little bit of a hold on Julio.
A little bit.
Then again, not many ways you can stop that beast other than, holding his arm down a little bit. But so if you guys were the referee on that play, do you throw that flag?
I'm going to hand this one over to Nate real quick and see what he says.
Absolutely. I mean, watching that live was a blatant pass interference on Richard Sherman, even with Earl Thomas over the top. I mean, he got a hand in there a little bit early. If you watch the replay, he literally starts grabbing his arm before the ball even gets to Julio Jones. And the scary part is Julio almost caught it. If you watch the replay, it's in his hand partially, and when he hits the ground, it kind of pops out because he's trying to one-hand it with Sherman on his back. But, yeah, I mean, I understand the whole concept of not wanting the ref to decide the game, and, I completely support that, whether it's football or basketball, calling a ticky-tack foul or calling a, weak holding call late in the game. But, I mean, when it's something blatant like that obviously affects the outcome of a very crucial play, you must throw the flag if you're the ref right there. I mean, I really don't know what he was looking at. The only thing I can think of is what we just talked about, how it didn't want to be the reason to decide the game. But, I mean, it was just a clear pass interference. He was going over the middle, went up for the ball. Sherman started to bring him down before the ball arrived. That's just bad. Yeah, Dan Quinn nearly blew his own brains out on the sideline. He was furious, and with great reason. I mean, I thought they definitely should have thrown it. So it was a bad end to a good game. But I don't know. What do you guys think?
Yeah, I'm going to have to agree with you on that one after hearing your convincing argument. Bravo on that one. I think that towards the end of the games with any sport, refs tend to kind of swallow their whistles and just kind of let the game play out, which I definitely agree with. But on this one, it was a blatant pass interference, which pretty much could have won the game for the Falcons, and it's kind of bad to see a game end like that, even with the Falcons, who have been very hot as of late. I mean, there's a big difference between 4-2 and 5-1, just kind of as a morale standpoint even. I mean, they were going to be in first place in their division anyways, but obviously that would have been a huge game to win, especially against the Seahawks coming off a week when they beat the Broncos, who were both 2 Super Bowl contenders at this point. But definitely it was unfortunate the game had to end that way.
Yeah, and I mean, looking right now at the Seahawks schedule going forward, so the Falcons going forward have the Chargers, which I think is an easy win. The Packers, which, I mean, going by off the way the Packers are playing, should be a win. Then Bucks, Eagles is a pretty tough game. And then Cardinals, of course, is going to be tough. But looking forward for the Falcons, I think they should be able to win a few of these next games. And contrary to what Jordan said, I think they should be able to go better than 6-10. I definitely think they're headed towards, around a 10-win season or more. So, I mean, but it's all kind of, what Falcons team we see, because we've seen the Falcons team that can beat the Broncos and hang with the Seahawks and all these things, but we've also in the past seen a Falcons team that can lose to the Bucks and maybe drop a game to the Chiefs or the Rams, some of these middle of the road teams. So I think just depending on what type of Falcons team we see, we'll either get that 10-win season or something less than that. But I think right now they're definitely headed towards the playoffs.
And just to add one more thing for their schedule coming up, I see 4 very big divisional games, and even they have 2 divisional games to end the season. So I think if they can end with at least 3 of these 4 division games won, they're going to be looking good headed into the playoffs.
Yeah, the difference between this year and last year, I feel like, for Atlanta is their defense has been playing better. And even in games that they've lost this year, they still, aside from week 1, there's no excuse losing to the Bucs. Jameis Winston has not had a very good year. But aside from that, I mean, yes, they did lose to the Seahawks, but they competed. I think the difference this year is they're not really getting blown out. Like, they competed to the very end. The week before, they beat a very good Broncos team. And yes, they did lose to the Seahawks by 2, but they were in it till literally the very last play. So I think that's a great sign for Atlanta fans. And looking at the schedule coming up, I mean, their division this year has proven to be pretty weak. The Panthers are awful, 1-5. Saints play no defense. So those are 2 games they should definitely win. They play the Bucs again. I think they'll definitely beat the Bucs second time around. I could honestly see the Falcons ending at somewhere around 11-5 or even 12-4. If they get hot and they keep rolling, we'll see how they respond to the big loss, though. I mean, it's always tough losing on the road by less than a field goal. So I think at this point it's more the mental. But, I mean, offensively, they seem to be the best team in the league right now offensively. So I think if they keep their mentality strong, they could definitely make some noise out in the NFC. Wrapping up our in-depth analysis for Week 6, we go to Lambeau Field, where the Green Bay Packers hosted my Dallas Cowboys in a very interesting contest. The Cowboys shock the world and win this one by a score of 30-16. Not many people saw this coming. Yes, Dak has been good. Yes, Zeke has been good. Cowboys have been overachieving so far. But I would say most people did not expect them to go into Green Bay and win 30-16 and really dominate the game. Like, it really wasn't close at any point. Dak Prescott, 247 yards, 3 touchdowns, 1 interception, incredible QBR of 117.4. I think the biggest storyline of this game, though, is Aaron Rodgers. Look at the stats. They don't look too bad. 294, 1 touchdown, 1 interception. But we talk about the eye test. Sometimes the stats don't match up to the way a person is playing. And for anyone who watched the Green Bay-Dallas game, it was very obvious that Aaron Rodgers is clearly not himself. We talked about this last week, how he hasn't seemed comfortable, how his numbers are down, his stats are shaky. But it really showed in this game. I mean, the Packers did not score a touchdown until the 4th quarter. In Lambeau, like that's unheard of. This offense has been putting up points for the past 8 years, and it's not like the Cowboys have a great defense by any means. So, I mean, what do you guys think is up with the Packers offense and Aaron Rodgers in specific? Like what's the problem there?
I actually just have no answer for why Rodgers is playing as bad as he has been. I mean, the protection's good. He has time. Jordy's back. He has receivers. He just is missing throws. He just seems like he's rushing. Sometimes he's not seeing coverages. I mean, I just don't know. He just has not looked himself. I want to say he'll be able to turn it around because that's Rodgers. That's one of the best quarterbacks in the NFL and has been the last few years. But I'm just at a loss for words after seeing him play. Even the game against New York, which they barely won, he threw 2 interceptions and he would just have all the time in the world to throw. And he just has looked horrible lately. So do you think it's safe to say that the Packers should move on from Aaron Rodgers?
Jordan, as usual, coming with the hot takes. I don't think it's quite that time yet. But, yeah, honestly, I mean, for the Packers to drop a game like this at home, it's definitely very unusual for them. One of the biggest parts of the game, I thought, was that the Cowboys kind of let Dak let it go this game. He was less of a game manager and kind of threw the ball around more. And, I mean, it showed in his stats, over 200 yards, 3 touchdowns. He did have the 1 pick. That was kind of a tough throw within his own red zone. But, I mean, Ezekiel Elliott is for real in my eyes. I was talking to Nate about this earlier. I truly think he is, just what the Cowboys needed, just a franchise running back who can, play their style, which is just run first and then throw in some passes there with Dak to these shifty receivers like Terrence Williams, Cole Beasley. But Ezekiel Elliott, last 4 games, he's gone over 130 yards. I mean, he might rush for 2,000 yards this year from, what we've seen so far. he's just been absolutely unstoppable. So I think he's a huge part of their success. I think he should win Rookie of the Year. He might even be the MVP of the league so far. He has been absolutely unbelievable. And I think he's kind of where all the Cowboys offense stems from. It's pounding the ball with him early and then, doing those play action passes, opening up the pass lanes a little bit. But yeah, as far as Rodgers, what's going on with him, the Packers are just struggling right now to get stuff going on offense the way they usually can be explosive. So I'm not sure what it is right now with Rodgers. I remember a few weeks ago he hadn't gone over 300 yards yet this season. I think, what did he get, 294 this week? But I think he's still yet to go over 300 this year, which is so unlike him because usually he's throwing the ball all around for, 300, 400 yards a week. So I really don't know what's going on with Rodgers, but, hopefully the Packers can turn it around and try to fight for a wild card spot because right now it looks like the Vikings kind of have that division.
Yeah, Green Bay, there's some reason for panic there as well. The Vikings don't seem to be going anywhere, and the Lions are good this year. The record may not reflect, but they're a good team that could give the Packers some trouble when they play. They certainly did last year, and they were probably worse last year, but Stafford has been playing really well. The Lions might get hot here, so, you're looking at a three-team race there in the NFC North, so that might be a problem. And yeah, Aaron Rodgers, if we're just looking at some stats here, Aaron Rodgers in all the games he's played this year, we'll go down the line. Passing yards of 199, 213, 205, 259, and 294. The fact that 294 is his leading passing yardage game so far this year is a giant red flag for any Green Bay fans. That is just crazy coming from a guy who is just posted video game numbers most of his career. 300 yards is the norm for him. The fact that he opened the season throwing under 200 yards is just insane. And the picks aren't a good sign too. He threw 2 last week, 1 this week. He's got 4 picks total already on the year. That's not good. And he doesn't really have any excuses either. Jordy Nelson, great weapon. Randall Cobb, great weapon. Eddie Lacy, I know he's not healthy right now, but in a few weeks he should be back to normal. They have a pretty good rushing attack. I wonder if maybe Aaron will start declining. It'll really be interesting to see how the rest of the season plays out. And if he keeps playing bad, the Packers might have to address the quarterback situation in the draft. No one thought we would say this before the season started, but NFL's a cutthroat league, and if Aaron Rodgers isn't getting the job done, they got to find someone who will. Now, for probably the best segment on the show, Fantasy Heroes of Week 6, coming at you live. For my team, great performance by a lot of guys, actually. I have a few options here. Matthew Stafford, bald. David Johnson, bald. But I have to hand it to my main man, Brandon Cooks. Called him out a couple weeks ago. He was a dud. This week, he was outstanding. 7 receptions, 173 yards, 1 touchdown, for a total of 23 fantasy points. Thank you, Brandon. Your work is appreciated.
My fantasy stud of the week has to go to one Julio Jones, 139 yards and 1 touchdown, got 19 points. It was the only real bright spot for my team in another week where we lost. We dropped to 2-4, but if Julio keeps it up and Ben Roethlisberger gets back healthy in a timely manner, looks like the Weston Road Flows will once again be on the winning column.
All right, everyone. Here with my Week 6 fantasy hero. This one comes from one of my 4 teams, the Gronk Abides. Little Big Lebowski reference there. Drew Brees, 465 yards, 4 tubs. That amounts to 39 fantasy points. Led me to a total of 121 points and another victory. Got to be happy with that. Great job, Drew. I appreciate you.
We'll just keep it rolling here. Move to the other side of the spectrum. The duds of the week. Also have a few options for this one. Scrolling through here. Tough decision. But I think I'll have to go, just because of his talent level, I have to go with Allen Robinson. The whole Jaguar offense has been a mess, so I don't know how much blame I can place directly on him. But against a suspect Bears defense, 3 receptions, 49 yards for a whopping 4 fantasy points. We need more, Allen. I just traded for you. I expect bigger things. Jordan?
I was actually going to go with Allen Robinson on this one, too. You kind of took mine there, Nate.
Yikes, you could also do it.
Yeah, he's having a rough year, but, we're going to change it up a little bit. I'm going to go with Ben Roethlisberger on this one.
All right.
Yeah, just didn't play too well overall, only threw 1 touchdown. Tore his meniscus, had the same amount of injuries as touchdowns in this game, so that's never good. Finished with only 9 points, and he was one of my guys who's I bank on him getting 25 points a week. I just assumed if Antonio Brown's going to catch 3 touchdowns, who's going to be throwing them? Ben Roethlisberger. Hasn't been the case so far. It looks like he's going to be missing some time, so that's going to be a huge blow to my fantasy team.
All right. The fantasy dud of the week comes from Crease Criminals, and it is the Carolina Panthers defense. Played against Drew Brees and the New Orleans Saints this week and gave up 41 points, which is never good for the defense that you started in fantasy. Had an interception. That was kind of the one bright spot, but had a grand total of -6 points. So I think next week I just won't start a defense, and I'll probably be better off than if I start the Carolina defense. That's just horrible. -6. -1 is bad, but -6 is a substantial drop to your score just because you played these guys. Totally unacceptable from a defense that I thought was going to be top-notch this year, so definitely disappointing. Come on, Carolina.
And now for our final segment, we will do way too early Coach of the Year awards. My nominee, although some of you may see it as bias, I actually believe this, it will be Jason Garrett. Cowboys off to a scorching start at 5-1. Pretty much left for dead when Romo got hurt in the preseason. Not much expected of them at all, especially with the Eagles and Redskins making improvements. The Giants were supposed to be good. So the fact that we're 5-1, we've beaten the Bengals and just recently the Packers on the road. Dak and Zeke playing great ball, team chemistry at an all-time high. Got to give Jason Garrett the nod for way too early Coach of the Year.
My way too early Coach of the Year prediction is going to have to go with Bill Belichick. The guy just time and time after again just proves why he should be considered one of the best NFL coaches of all time. He went 3-1 over the 4-game stretch without arguably the best player in football who plays the most important position in football. And there hasn't been any real sign that the Pats don't finish 15-1 and win the Super Bowl. So I think if all that keeps up, he's going to end up taking home that award.
All right, my pick for Coach of the Year thus far has got to be Mike Zimmer, head coach for the Minnesota Vikings. Came out strong this year. They're 5-0, coming off their bye week after this week. So I think they're going to stay strong the rest of the year and probably win, at least 12 games. That defense looks absolutely vicious. What does Nate refer to them as? The purple people eaters?
Oh, yeah.
Absolutely ruthless. They've just been tearing through offenses. And I think a lot of that has to do with Mike Zimmer. He's a defensive-minded coach. Definitely has those boys motivated. So at this point, as the only undefeated team left in the league, I think definitely got to give it up to Mike Zimmer so far.
That about does it for episode 6 of 4th and Inches. We had a good time. We hope you had a good time. I'm Nate.
I'm Jordan.
And I'm Christian.
We'll see you next episode for 4th and Inches.